you got Zachary Hughes to stab her 35 times in the neck and the head, left her, after dragging her throughout the house, left her nearby a pool of blood and sprinkled rose petals around her. Would you do something like that?
No. Well, first of all, the worst thing I ever knew about Christina and Brad was they took a shower with my daughter and got in bed together, according to her. Okay? That's the extent of my knowledge of how bad they were, and that's why I left. And I went to DSS. No one's gonna have me. Second, I've been in family court with Christina Parcell for 10 years, right? Up and down, all things like that. If I was gonna do something like that, it would have happened a long time ago, right?
You told me that Zachary Hughes saved your life. How?
By being so supportive, by getting on a plane, showing up, keeping me distracted, focused, doing the footwork. He did stuff for me that I couldn't get anybody else to do, you know, that didn't volunteer up to help, to do things like that. You know, all this crap like Sparkman, reading all the, okay, so I don't know if Detective Sparkman was a world champion Scrabble player, but he's, you know, and there are several texts in there, right, that I went, that's not what I said. I know what I wrote it. I know what I said. He's just spitballing all this stuff. But there's one in there where it says, harass the shit out of her. Conveniently, we don't have the unscrambled response from Mr. Hughes.
Why would you ask him to harass her?
Because I was angry, but I wanted him to, like, if you read it, here's her phone number. I meant, like, take out ads on Craigslist advertising there's puppies at her house for sale. That kind of, like, you know, bug her, get, you know, with the phone number.
Did you ask him to kill her?
Of course not. It's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. And I'll tell you another thing. You got 1,700 and whatever. We all hear how many texts were between Zach and I over. I was the other day for fun. I counted like texts between a friend of mine in the last week. It was like 312, talking about nothing. So
you and I have had quite a few ourselves.
So we got all these texts, right? And this big giant case. Right? And we heard the prosecution for 2 years. When that phone gets open and we read those texts, this is gonna a big fat freaking nothing.
But wait a second.
Let me finish.
When they open the phone, all the texts are mainly about Christina, and then there's this one text that says, "How'd the music research go?"
He was doing 32 sonatas from memory. He was planning on he was always doing projects. There was someone he knew that had this traveling stage on the back of a truck, flatbed thing, and people would perform. And he was going to come up with some music for that and do things like that. He's writing music in jail. This guy's life revolves around music. He's a Juilliard graduate. He's a freaking savant. The guy's a genius, right? So, but you got all those texts, and they're all reading them, but they don't want to read the responses. Just like the 13th solicitor prosecutes, and you're looking at a victim of it. He prosecutes through lies, deception, and omission. And we saw a full week of that, a full week of it. And I proved it when I went to court and I beat his ass with a directed verdict. Because that's what he does. He filed charges against me because he thought I had something to do with this. Not because he didn't give a rat's ass about custodial interference. They're just trying to get something. And within a couple of weeks of him knowing I was going to whip him in court because he knew he had nowhere to go, they charged me again with something that Bevel had investigated years before this and went down the trail and found that all those pictures had been published by Lutina, so anybody could be putting them out there. But he lied about that in court the other day, right on the stand.
Well, some of the photos have the website. I mean, first of all, so you did ask Zachary Hughes to harass her.
In that text? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, harass
but
the
you
crap
didn't
out.
ask him to kill her.
Of course not. And again, the 1,700 texts, where are the texts of me asking him to do that?
Why are you communicating on WhatsApp? Why not just...
Because I live in Italy. You spend a lot of time in Europe. I know that about you. Everybody uses WhatsApp because it's free.
I use WebEx, but yeah, to your point.
Okay, nobody uses WebEx.
Yeah.
So anyway, but WhatsApp is our long distance carrier in Europe. We can get, it's like, believe me, you've been there. Everything's like, taxes, money, red tape. So, so that's why Dude, I'll show you my phone. Everybody in Europe I know, they're all on my WhatsApp. That's just the way it is.
So you had a phone call with Zachary Hughes that lasted 120 minutes the day after the murder. Is this a typical amount of time that you would spend talking?
We
to
would
him?
talk. Yeah, because I would like get home. I'm 6 hours ahead. And he'd be like, I'd be getting late from working or just going out and do whatever, and he'd like buzz or whatever. Hey, what's up? I was running jobs. What's going on in Italy? Especially like after he had come back from Italy, he was like, how's so and so? All these people. He's like, hey, have you talked to? How's Zell? The tattoo lady, and how's blah blah blah. How's that beautiful girl? And so he was like so enthralled by it, and met a bunch of nice people there, and musicians and stuff. So. 120-minute phone call. I probably had a 120-minute phone call with someone today. It's not with you. Well, no, but like my friend Mel called, whatever. But just about, I could show you my friend Dwayne, 2 and 3 hour phone calls here. We'll talk about whatever. I know a lot of intelligent people. I try to surround myself with intelligent people because it makes me feel smart. But so it's so not unusual. It's just so not unusual. And that's the funny thing. 760, 1800, we'll call it 1800 texts, right?
Do you think the guy on the bicycle looks like?
Hold on, 1800 texts over 6 months.
Do you think the guy on the bicycle looks like Zachary?
I don't think so. Not the Zach I remember when he was visiting me. He's living in my house for a couple of weeks, and it's like he'd walk out of his bedroom and go get a cup of coffee. 2 guys living in a house, and he's like in his underwear, and he's like, dude, he had freaking muscles. He's constantly working out, constantly exercising.
Well, the lady that lives in the neighborhood,
the meth head,
she's she gasped audibly.
I saw the act.
That was very compelling to the jury. But the jury's not hearing about all these things that you just talked about with Bradley Post, and of course we all thought Bradley Post was going to be the murderer because he was arrested immediately after the murder. So the shock that this random guy who's trimming trees, doing yard work, cleaning your house,
and is a Juilliard graduate,
is a concert pianist who is highly respected in the community and well known, and so many people of good character speak to his good character. It's just a shock.